you ask yourself, can a Christian suffer from mental health conditions? Of course. Any human being can experience mental health issues, right? Christianity doesn't make you immune to mental health conditions, and it is also not a lack of God's presence in your life. Yes, from the sciences, you are taught that there are biochemicals, right, in your brain. And a lot of times it's the imbalances that cause like mental health conditions, right? Also, we know that there's a spiritual component because we believe that as Christians that the spiritual controls the physical. But I would ask you a question. If for any reason you wake up with a migraine, are you gonna think that you were possessed, or would you think that, okay, it's just a migraine and let me treat it? Yeah. Or if you probably went out for dinner and you came back and the next day you woke up with stomach upset, would you say, they poisoned the food, that's why? Yeah. Or somebody wanted to kill you? No. Yes, it might be food poisoning, but not that they poisoned your food, right? Food poisoning means like an organism. So enough of the sciences, and now let's talk to things that we can all relate with, which is that mental health conditions are not immune to your faith, to your wealth, to your knowledge, to your accomplishments. And that's why a president can deal with mental issues, and the least in the country can also deal with mental issues. That's why the most upright Christian or the most upright faith-based person can deal with mental issues, and the person that has no religion, nothing whatsoever, can also deal with mental health issues. So all of these barriers and all of these things that we think immune people from mental health issues are nothing but illusions and nothing but false news, basically. So what happens when you have a mental condition, just in general, Christian or not, rich or not, famous or not? You go for help. It's the same way that if you have an headache, as I said, you also go ahead and get Panadol or something, right? So one of my life's mission is to demystify mental health stigmas, right? The stigmas around mental health, which is that a lot of people think that, one, it's a spiritual attack. Two, a lot of people also think that there is no cure to it. So they think that all you need to do is pray or lay hands on them. Or there's also the stigma or the wrong misconception that is only like the psychosis or the depression that are mental health issues. Anxiety is a mental health issue, Anxiety, not just the symptom of like once in a while anxiety, but like anxiety that gets in the way of your productivity. It's a mental health condition, right? So a lot of times we think of the dramatic ones, or we think of the more intense ones, but we forget that even PTSD, a lot of people have gone through grief and they've not been able to just get their lives back. That's PTSD on its own. Some people have gone through traumatic experiences. Those are all mental health conditions. So the summary of everything I'm saying is that instead of just looking out, look in. What am I dealing with that I should actually reach out for help about? A lot of people did not grow up in households that are noteworthy. And I'm not talking about affluence. I'm talking about like just in the basicness of how an household should be. Some people grew up in a toxic household. Some people saw their parents fight, which is okay to argue, but physical fights. Yeah. Some people grew up seeing their fathers beat their mom, all of those are traumatic. And a lot of times we don't think they are traumatic until we become adults and we see how we show up to our world and we're like, where is this from? So in summary, I would say spend some time introspecting. Why do I raise my voice? Why is it that I feel like I need to boss people around, or I feel like when I show up to a meeting or a room where there are so many other qualified people as I am, I feel a need to step on their necks and prove a point that I am the best here? All of those things are pointing to something that, if not dealt with, it will become even a bigger problem. So what happens when you have a mental condition? You reach out to a psychiatrist. So most times, most healthcare systems involves you or would require you to go to your primary care physician, which is like your family doctor. And the family doctor now refers you to a specialist, which is usually like a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a therapist, depending on what you need, right? I don't want you to be adverse to the idea of therapy. I've gone through therapy. Some of you know that I lost my dad 4 years at this point, and the grief was a lot for me to deal with, that I needed a professional to unpack it with. So it is not something you should be adverse to. It's not something that you should think is a taboo. And yes, I know also in the Black communities and even in minority populations, it's almost like don't talk about, they just put it aside. But that is exactly why this toxicity continues. That is why people are growing up in dysfunctional homes, because the father has an anger issue that he doesn't know that is also a mental health condition. And guess what? The children grow up in feeling inferior or also with those same anger issues. So there are so many dynamics, there are so many parts of this that honestly, if we should unpack, we will spend like 1 hour unpacking. But I just want you to take out time today or whenever you have the time. Think about patterns in your family. Think about things that it looks fishy. It just looks like this can't be normal. Those things, you could make a list of them and find out, how do I deal with this? How do I make sure I deal with this now so that my children don't have to go through the same things that I suffered or be a victim of an unhealed or untreated version of me. So summary of everything, and I feel like I've used summary a couple times, is 1, ask for help. 2 is that the Spirit of God still lives in you. It's okay, even if you have a mental condition, and it doesn't have to be the more intense ones. It could be anxiety. It could be work anxiety. That is a mental health condition, or that is a mental health expression. That every time it's Monday or it's Sunday night, you're already anxious. Oh my God. It could also mean that you're in the wrong job. But it could also just be that there's something that makes you anxious that you need to unpack with a therapist or a psychotherapist. So please do not be adverse to the idea of taking medications if you need to. Some people say that they know they're depressed, right? Based on like the signs of being depressed. They meet the criteria. But I've heard Christians say things like, oh, they don't want to be on drugs because they kind of just have to be on drugs for the rest of their life. That's not true. For the rest of their lives, that's not true. You don't have to be on drugs for the rest of your life. But for the season that you need those medications, best believe you need to take them so that we can have the possibility of you getting off them if you improve over the number of years. It's just like, I find it interesting. I feel like it's double standards, because the same people that don't want to take medications for depression will take medications for hypertension, for diabetics, which is daily. So it's just like physical health and mental health, they are just as important. And a lot of times your mental health affects your physical health. So please and please, I know I don't put out a lot of like health related, medical related stuff, but this is something that I feel like God will have me speak about. That the fact that you're a Christian doesn't mean you should not use medical interventions. It is the wisdom of God, right? Jesus is both the power of God and the wisdom of God. So there's the power dimension, yes, miracle signs and wonders, but there's also the wisdom that God has given the doctors and the specialists to be able to come up with interventions to help you. So please and please, nip it in the bud before it becomes a monster. Whatsoever thing you might be dealing with, whatsoever thing that people have pointed out to you about, and just be like, oh, and that's how we are from the place that I'm from. No, it's not normal. And it's okay to have those hard conversations and reach out for help. I hope this has helped you. The goal of this is to make you, to demystify that, stigma. And yeah, it is not untreatable. It is also not unheard of. So do not feel isolated. Do not feel like you are alone. And if you have a friend that has a mental condition, or in fact, a lot of women experience PMS, which is premenstrual syndrome, or some people even experience premenstrual dysphoric disorder. I believe that's the PMDD, which is like even more severe than PMS, like almost like they can't function because their mood is just all over the place around their menses. That's the mental health condition, but we just focus on schizophrenias, depressions, but everyday people suffer from mental health conditions, and there is help out there.